you joined Thornley in 2002. This is like a super group. I mean, there's Ian Thornley, there's Sekou, there's Tavis, The Art of Dying, you from The Watchmen. This is like a super group that's formed. How did that opportunity present itself? You've already mentioned tours with Big Rec. I guess that would be the start of the relationships.
Well, it's interesting because the first show that we ever did, we were called Supergroup.
Oh, wow.
We opened Edgefest in whatever year. It was like a last minute thing. Ralph called and said, you guys have been working on some new material. It sounds really cool. Let's get you out to do a show. And we said, well, we're not even a band yet, you know. And anyways, we ended up doing it and they called us Supergroup. I was the end of the Big Rec Watchmen arena tour, the co-headlining tour. I can't remember what year that was. But that year, Ian met my sister, Christine, and they ended off becoming a couple and getting married, having a family. So a few years later, the Watchmen have finished Slow Motion. We finished the tour. Audio Playground is kind of not really happening anymore because stuff got kind of, you know, there was sort of, it's just, everything was weird there. The band was kind of feeling strange. Big Rec were going through a very similar thing. They were kind of riding the bottom of the roller coaster, and you know, the camp was a little worn and tired. And I was spending a lot of time with Ian, and just hanging out in Toronto because I was home and Ian was home, and of course he was with my sister and family, and you know, you're in proximity. So for the better part of a year, me and Ian were just hanging out at his studio with me and Ian and Sekou, and writing, recording, you know, just sitting there all day, drinking beer, smoking cigarettes, listening to stuff we recorded, you know, changing lyrics, changing chords, re-recording it again, doing all this. And we were doing this for about a year. And that was when Ralph approached us and said, do you guys want to do Edgefest? And we said, sure. And I guess that kind of triggered something with the Watchmen, because at that point, you know, we were kind of, it was just me and Danny and Joey. We had Ryan as a sideman, but we didn't really have a permanent drummer. It had been really sort of hard on all of us, you know, parting ways with Sammy, and being through what we'd been through. And then when I was doing this thing with Ian, you know, I got a call from Danny and Joey, and they said, you know, well, are you leaving the Watchmen? I said, no, I'm just doing what I do. And there was sort of a conversation about, maybe we shouldn't be doing projects with other people, and, keeping things focused. And I guess, I was at that point where I just kind of said, yeah, I want to work with other people. I want to do things. I want to, I want to keep with the Watchmen, but I want to be able to do things other than that. And so the Watchmen and Big Rec sort of both died at that point. And me and Ian had just spoken amongst ourselves and said, let's start a new band. And then we started taking the demos and started shopping them and moving them out. We didn't have a band name at the time. And, then management and record company came on board, and then there was some shift in the way of thinking there, and it became a very Thornley centric project, and name became Thornley, and then the record came out, and that was a whole other start of a whole other road. Yeah, a whole other path.
So I remember that album coming out in 2004. I went out and bought it. Man, that was a big deal. The album goes gold, 5 singles. So far, so good. Come Again, Easy Comes, Beautiful, all comes out in the wash. The first 2 singles were top 5 hits. I remember there was success in the US as well. It wasn't just in Canada. That album, spread its wings in other countries. I actually saw Thornley, and I don't know if you were in the band then. I saw Thornley with Theory of a Dead Man at the Ottawa Civic Center. And so the album comes out in 2004. I feel like this is probably 2006, maybe between 2004, 2006. Do you remember ever playing the Civic Center with Thornley?
Many times.
Theory of a Dead Man?
Yeah, I think we did a New Year's show there, and we did a couple shows there at the Civic Center. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I'm a big fan. I remember all my best friends at the time, they were huge Thornley fans as well. So were you feeling I guess kind of fortunate that you were in this platinum selling band, and then you find yourself in another popular gold selling band, having success on radio and touring? I mean, most people will never enjoy success with one band, let alone 2 or more.
I was very, very aware of how rare and lucky fortune had shined on my way. Getting to work with the Watchmen, for my entire career, and having stuff like Thornley, Ron Hines, these other things sort of on the side have been so amazing. The time with Ian and Sekou, and there was a series of guitarists, but for a large part of it, it was Tavis. Um, because we had worked on that record for the better part of a year and a half, almost 2 years, from kind of little sort of riffs to full songs, and then going in and recording them, with Gavin Brown, again, recorded, monster sounds. Getting to experience what Ian had learned about playing guitar and what Ian learned about guitar layering and putting guitar parts in, very different than the way that Joey worked. The entire experience was very different than the Watchmen. And then of course, going down to the US, which we did, a lot. The Watchmen never really toured in the US. I mean, we did for brief periods of time, but not for like stretches of a couple of years like we did with Thornley. And US touring is a totally different ballgame as well. Very, very different. The shows are closer, the fans are crazier. It's a more, everything about it is just a little bit more visceral. Even sort of the fame element of it. You see a tour bus in Regina outside a club and you walk by it. Down there you see a tour bus outside some club and you line up outside it and wait to see who's on it. They've got that fan mentality, which we don't really have in Canada. So everything about it was different. And of course, playing with Sekou, totally different. Sammy is one of the most rock solid drummers that I know. And I know Sammy's playing inside out. But then all of a sudden there was this Sekou cat who, had that element, but also had this sort of crazy musical expression that went way outside of that as a drummer, and helped me to further my bass playing too. He made playing bass really easy. And of course, standing next to Ian on stage night after night and just waiting to see what's going to come out from the guitar. Fuck, man, that guy. He is a genius guitar player, and it was a privilege to stand on stage with him night after night.